Hello there and welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Glad you're with us. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and it's the election season, so today we're going to meet a couple of candidates.
Well, we're going to meet the new State Auditor and Inspector. We don't know which person it's going to be yet. You all will decide that. But today we're going to have on the current State Auditor and Inspector and Democratic candidate for that position, Steve Burrage, and we're going to have the Republican nominee for that position, Gary Jones. They're going to join us today and talk together on the set about issues that are affecting them in their race.
It's coming up today on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
We didn't just wake up with this problem. Barrel by barrel, dollar by dollar, we've been exchanging American security for foreign oil. Enough. We're home to a 100-year supply of natural gas, and now we know its potential. Fuel, power, cleaner air. See how natural gas is making a difference at chk.com. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
There's no waiting at the St. Anthony ER.
No waiting.
Announcing the end of ER waiting at St. Anthony Hospital. Go to saintsok.com and reserve your time online.
Why didn't we think of that?
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really privileged to have the two candidates for State Auditor and Inspector join us and give us their valuable time, and we're going to try to get right on with the show. I want to introduce to you first on my right the incumbent State Auditor Inspector, Steve Burrage. He has been the State Auditor and Inspector since 2008. He's an undergraduate of University of Oklahoma in accounting, practiced accounting for 5 years, then was president and chief executive officer of First Bank Antlers for about 26 years. He was appointed by Governor Brad Henry to the position of State Auditor and Inspector, as I said, in 2008. Steve, welcome. Glad to have you.
It's very nice to be here today.
To my left is Gary Jones. Gary did his undergraduate work at Cameron University in accounting. He worked for Southwestern Bell for 28 years. He was a Comanche County Commissioner for a term or so. He has been also chairman of the Oklahoma Republican Party and actually served longer than any other person in that position. He is a certified public accountant. I failed to mention that Steve's also a certified public accountant. Gary's a certified public accountant and a certified fraud examiner. Gary, welcome.
Welcome. Actually, I worked 10 years for Bell, but
10 years.
Right.
Well, I need an auditor to audit my math. Thank you.
You're
Glad to have you.
It's good to be here.
Thank you.
It's always tough on candidates, but sometimes it can be tougher on their families. Gary, talk about the family that is providing your support.
Well, I'm married to my wife, Mary Jane. We've been married for 33 years. She just started this year her 36th year of teaching. She's a kindergarten teacher at Cache Public Schools. My daughter Kelly, who also teaches LD Math at Cache. My son Levi, who works for the Juvenile Affairs and will be going active. He's a Lance Corporal in the United States Marines. We'll go active duty October 1st and scheduled to deploy for Afghanistan in January. I've got 3 beautiful grandchildren. My grandson Blake, who's 6, just started first grade. My 4-year-old granddaughter Lauren, who started pre-K this year, and my youngest grandchild Olivia, who's actually 3 months old today.
Wow. And Steve?
Well, I'm from Antlers, Oklahoma. My mother raised us 4 kids on her salary as a school teacher and as an extension home economist. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Roberta. We've been married 35 years. I have 3 very successful, educated sons, but most important, I have 4 beautiful grandchildren, Parker, Emma, Lauren, and Brooke. Many people know my older brother, Mike. He was a former federal judge. My brother David, who's running the banks, he served on the Oklahoma Department of Transportation Commission under Governor Walters and then Governor Keating's 2 terms. And my little sister is like me. She's a bean counter, CPA, and she's the chief financial officer for one of the largest furniture companies in the country.
Well, let me ask you each this question. Start with you, Steve. What about your background and your experience qualifies you for this job?
Well, you know, first of all, I am a CPA. As you mentioned, I've been a partner in a CPA firm. We did all kinds of audits. We did a lot of governmental auditing. And for the past 27 years, I've been in the banking industry. But while I've been in the banking industry, I've been very involved in the audit process. I have served on several private company boards. One was a $2 billion bank that I was on the audit committee, responsible for internal controls in the bank, responsible for the external audit, the planning. I was on a board of a private insurance company, and I was on that audit committee where our responsibility was, again, proper internal controls and planning and managing the external audit process.
Gary, let me ask you the same question. What about your background and experience qualifies you for this position?
Well, I've been studying accounting since I was 18 years old. Like I said, I'm a certified public accountant, certified fraud examiner. Went to work for Bell Telephone at 18. At 20 was promoted into management. 21 was promoted again to the Office of Planning and Budgets. Did independent cost studies, audited those results and findings, started my own business. Myself and a part-time employee actually had $4,000 in savings and quit my job at Bell Telephone, built that business to over 40 employees. Ran for county commissioner, didn't take a single penny in campaign contributions back in 1994, beat a 10-year incumbent. And as county commissioner, worked to show that government can be more efficient, more effective. We actually built the most productive bridge building program in the history of the state. Where traditionally a county commissioner would build somewhere between 4 and 6 bridges. Working and using my accounting skills and business background, we went out to find better, more efficient ways of doing things. We didn't just build 4 or 6 bridges. We built 34, all steel and concrete, most in the history of the state. I served as chairman of the Republican Party, which is actually beneficial because I always remember something J.C. Watts said. He said once he got out of professional sports, he never dreamed he'd get into a profession that people had bigger egos. and dealing with those egos and dealing with those elected officials is a big part of this job. I've done that. We've done it successfully, and I think it's been very beneficial in this job.
Gary, you've had to travel the state to campaign for this job. What are the voters telling you?
Well, first of all, what I'm amazed about is the fact that very few people understand what the state auditor does. And one of the big concerns is people do not have trust in government. They don't trust what government's doing. They're fed up with the inefficiencies, the waste in government. And I have a history of being effective and efficient. And so, going out and talking to them about the issues and about how we truly can be the watchdog for the citizens of Oklahoma is the number one thing I'm hearing people talk about.
And Steve, in your travels as a candidate, what are you hearing?
Well, people are concerned about the way their money is being spent. They want someone in that office that is truly independent, that will be a watchdog over the taxpayers' money. This money is hard-earned, and they just want to make sure that it's spent in a proper manner, that it's effective and efficient, and, because it's their money.
Well, let me ask you, Steve, to follow up on that a little bit. The previous question is, what are the voters saying? What do you, as a candidate, Steve Burrage, think is the number one issue?
Well, the number one issue in this
race.
The number one issue in this race for the state auditor's position is that you have an auditor that's a professional. I was brought out of the private sector. I'm not a politician. Governor Henry wanted someone that had private sector experience, that understood the auditing function, that had been involved in the auditing function. My job is to operate an office that we audit taxpayers' money. 49% of Oklahoma's budget comes from the federal government. and I have the responsibility of doing financial and compliance audits, to make sure that that money is spent properly.
Gary, let me ask you the same question. What do you think is the #1 issue in this race?
Well, I think the #1 issue is to safeguard the public's interest, to make sure their tax dollars are spent legally and effectively, but also efficiently. People are tired of waste. I said there's a big difference between my opponent and myself. For instance, one of the first things that he did is come in and remodel the office and spend, if you include the architect fees, over $275,000 to remodel the office, which equates to over $100 a square foot. I wouldn't do that. I would come in to look to see what we do to accomplish our functions. And people spend, they work hard for their tax dollars. And they want somebody that'll lead by example. What I'll do is go in there and make sure that we focus on the issues at hand, which is auditing, make sure that the people's interest is taken care of, and also go in and do performance audits to find those ways to make government more efficient, more effective, and do that. I'll do that. I won't be spending money on fancy things for the office. I'll be spending money on things that actually accomplish what the people want, which is to provide trust and integrity in government.
Gary, give me some background on the position of state auditor. How many people are involved? What's the size of the budget? Well,
the budget is approximately $10 million right now. I think there's approximately 120 people on staff right now. Don't know exactly how many of those are auditors, but you do have a big staff. When I was 20 years old, I was managing 100 telephone operators at Bell Telephone. So you have to really sit down and be a manager. I've been a manager for over 30 years. And that's the big function. It's about how you manage the functions, how you take the tasks that are assigned to you, and accomplishing those tasks in an efficient, effective, and a timely manner. And that's one thing that we will definitely focus on.
Steve, the idea of managing the department for the state.
Well, first of all, that was a renovation, but I won't get into that. I have about 120 auditors. I have offices in Ada, Weatherford, and Tulsa. But more importantly, I have cut the administrative overhead of the auditor's office by over $1 million. I stepped into an office that was a political dumping ground. I've got rid of those people. I'm only hiring qualified people to work in the auditor's office, and I am accepting applications right now if anybody out there has an accounting degree and needs a job. But we're operating that office at a high level of efficiency. And I'm just out to save taxpayers' money.
Let's get to a break. Steve Burrage, Gary Jones are running for state auditor. We'll have more on the verdict right after this.
I'm Major Matthew Newmeyer, currently stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I'm a Chickasaw. In 2003, when I was part of the drive to Baghdad, I found being a soldier was going to be a lot more than just firing your weapon and being in a combat situation. Being a warrior, but also being the good citizen. That is probably why American soldiers are so respected. Because here are 18 to 20-year-olds. 1 minute they're in combat, people are shooting at them. The next minute they're treating children just as if they were in their own home. That warrior ethos that the Chickasaws had also translates directly to what you do as a soldier. Strength, integrity, the grace, and the idea that you're part of a greater community, that you give to that community, that you find it important to be the best you can be at what you're doing.
The oil and natural gas industry help provide a revenue that feeds our schools, providing a better education for not only my kids, but for children all over the state.
It will allow the schools to buy better equipment. We'll be able to hire qualified teachers, all around to have a better educational experience.
The future has never been brighter for our students here.
We should be very proud of the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma.
Steve Burrage and Gary Jones are our guests. They are running for state auditor and inspector. Gary, this first question is for you. There's frequently political pressure or influence that can be directed toward the state auditor. How would you deal with that? What's your role on that?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that you keep the task at hand. That you go through, you put your scope of the audit, you move forward, and that you concentrate on the issues. And you're going to have political pressure just by the nature of the job. But the key is that you maintain focus on the audit. That and when you get those political naysayers, then don't engage them. You got to be real careful. And one thing that I think has happened is you can't go out there and talk about existing audits or pending audits in giving speeches to civic clubs and talking to political events, and then not expect to get criticized on the back end. You got to be real careful to make sure that you don't go out there talking about issues and you don't have discussions with people that aren't involved in that audit process.
Steve?
Well, I'm experiencing the political pressure right now concerning my audit over Broken Arrow Public Schools that was requested by the Broken Arrow School Board. It was not a request from an Attorney General or DA. And, I had to withhold the release of the audit because of impaired independence on part of the auditor, the leak of what was not even a draft. It was a compilation of the auditor's thoughts to the press the day before I was to release that audit. But I did what anybody in my profession would have done. I know it wasn't politically popular, but I had to refer to what is professional and what is ethical, and that was not to release the audit till we investigated everything. And then during that process, the Attorney General asked me to go in and change the scope of that audit from sort of agreed upon procedures between myself and the school board, and to turn it into a full investigative audit.
That may be part of the question that we're going to go to now. What about the person or entity that's being audited? Can they sometimes exert political pressure on the office?
Well, obviously they can try, but if an auditor abides by his code of conduct as set forth by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, that you will remain independent and you will maintain a proper judgment and integrity. So surely that can happen. I've been accused of it happening on the Broken Arrow Public Schools audit, but that is completely false. That is uninformed people making comments about something they don't know about. And like my opponent, I'll put it this way, it's kind of like a nurse criticizing a doctor when the nurse hasn't even been in the same room as the patient. I mean,
Gary, what about the entity that's being audited?
Well, no, it's the entity that's being audited should have their input during the auditing process or through the exit interview. But let me respond to the comment by my opponent. My criticism has not been on the results of the audit. My criticism has been on the lack of timeliness. And I mentioned, Mr. Burrage has been traveling around the state talking to civic club after civic club about the audits, and on occasion at political events talking about the Broken Arrow audit. The other day, I think it was August 5th, Mr. Burrage, an employee left somewhere from central Oklahoma, went to Tulsa, and went to the Tulsa airport, was joined by another employee, and Mr. Burrage and a fourth employee got on his bank's corporate plane, flew to the Tulsa airport, and then they went to the Skytook Rotary Club to talk about a 6-month-old audit. I got a call from somebody said there was 3 cars from the state auditor's office at that Rotary Club, and so I sit there and think, well, there's at least 5 employees from the state auditor's office talking to a civic club, and this has been happening, throughout the state. When you've got a pending audit, when the school system of Broken Arrow is in an uproar, I fail to see that the proper amount of resources were put to get that audit released in a timely manner.
Steve, you want to respond?
I really have no response to that. The people that were at Skytook, I did fly there in my own airplane. 2 of them were some of my friends. The public requested that the 2 investigative auditors that worked on that be there. It wasn't just a Rotary Club meeting. It was a meeting that the Rotary Club called and invited the whole town over the audit we did on Skytook Public Schools. And so I did have 2 of the auditors that performed that investigative audit, because I was asked by the public for them to be present in case they had any specific questions for them.
I'm thinking we ought to move on to the final comments
we
from
need
each
to get
candidate.
the final closing.
We're trying to provide 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes for each of you to look in the camera and tell the citizens of Oklahoma why they should vote for you for State Auditor Inspector. And flipped a coin earlier, and the results of that coin flip, Steve, you go first.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm clearly the most qualified to be the State Auditor and Inspector in the state of Oklahoma. I bring to this office 35 years of private sector experience, not only in banking, but in accounting and auditing. I have been a partner in a CPA firm that we did audits of all kinds. You know, since I've been in office, I've uncovered over $4 million in fraud. The sad part about it is $2 million of that has been in our public school systems. Yes, I do go around the state. I'm trying to teach people that are in a position of governance what it means and what their responsibilities are to have a proper system of checks and balances, what it means to have proper segregation of duties in the entities that they are put in a position of governance. Because every time I go into a situation where we have fraud and abuse, I see a breakdown in internal controls, a lack of segregation of duties. I also teach at the new school board member workshop, and I show them what a proper system of internal controls are that they need to utilize so we can prevent some of this waste, fraud, and abuse. We're not going to stop it, but at least we can catch it before it gets out of hand at situations like Marble City Public Schools, Skytook Public Schools, Butner Public Schools, Wagner Public Schools. Those are the schools I've been in since I've been in office. And currently, just recently, I've been asked to go into 2 more schools. So we've got to prevent this from happening.
Gary?
People need somebody they can trust. They need somebody that'll lead by example. I have a history of uncovering more corruption in the state of Oklahoma than the last 3 auditors combined. People want to see government more efficient, more effective. I've done that, and we'll continue to do that. But what we will do is we'll focus to make sure that the citizens of Oklahoma know that there's a watchdog watching out for them. My opponent takes credit for audits that are done. These are things that other people found. We will do that, but we will do it in an efficient and effective manner and do it in a timely manner. Right now, the state auditor's office is behind many years. There's counties out there that haven't been audited for 3 or 4 years, and that's unacceptable. We need to make absolutely sure that the resources that the citizens give us are used in a very cost-effective, efficient manner, and that we do these things in a timely manner. A 3-year-old audit is of no good. We need to make sure that the citizens of Oklahoma get what they pay for. We need to instill trust in that, and the way that we instill trust in government is to go out there and to lead by example and to make sure that the citizens know that the person that's their state auditor is somebody they can turn to, that somebody they can report something to, and if there's some wrongdoing, that it'll be investigated, it'll be reported on, and that the good people that are working in government will have somebody that'll assist them in doing their job, and the citizens out there, the elected officials that are stealing from the public, will get caught and pay the price.
Republican Gary Jones, Democrat Steve Burrage, our candidates for Auditor and State Inspector. Thank you all both for coming on the verdict.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks to
Appreciate
both of you. Good luck to both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are we off the air?
Yeah, not quite. Kent and I'll be back right after this for a final word.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of the verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Well, a lively exchange between the two candidates running for State Auditor Inspector, Gary Jones, the Republican candidate, and Democrat Steve Burrage.
Yes, and they're two very qualified candidates. You did today meet your new State Auditor and Inspector. It could be either one of those gentlemen, and they're both well qualified and are going to be going around the state, letting voters see them and get acquainted with them. Hope you'll attend some of their events whenever they may be held, and let them know that you saw them on the verdict. And
throughout the month of October and into November, we're going to be meeting several of the candidates that are running for office.
Yes, it's really pleasant to be able to tell you that next week it is our intention to have James Langford and Billy Coyle, the two candidates for the 5th District House of Representatives seat. And then thereafter, we'll have some head-to-head meetings with other candidates in statewide offices.
Some website information on the two gentlemen who were in today. First of all, you can get more information from Steve Burrage and his campaign by going to his website. It is steveburragecpa.com. That's Steve and then B-U-R-R-A-G-E, CPA.com. And there's information about Gary Jones and his candidacy on his website, jonesauditor.com. jonesauditor.com. And if you have an idea for a show that you'd like to see on an upcoming edition of The Verdict, you can go to our website. That web address is theverdict.tv, theverdict.tv. And we got just a few seconds here. This is show number 491. We'll be coming up on number 500. So if you have an idea for what we should do for our 500th show, again, go to our website, theverdict.tv, and let us know. It's been a long ride.
Well, it has. And if you got some ideas, folks, about what the show you just saw and you want to send your comments, use our website to do so.
For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week right here on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.